Hi guys, welcome back to the Funky Evolution Party. I hope by now you're really starting to love evolution and how we as a global community can come together and start to make those changes. Yesterday I spoke about the supernatural and how everything is about numbers and mathematics. So it's really important to understand that the power is in numbers, and if we really want to have a great party, it's about the alien nation coming together and creating that global love wave slash rave. Today I thought we would have a bit of a house party and talk about the housing crisis, because again 2020 has just been such an eye-opener in terms of how we have been locked into this imperial system, that why is there so much homelessness? Why can't families afford to pay their rent, and they can't put food on the table because their rent is almost 60 to 70% of their wages? And how, again, why do we have all of these refugees living in really, really, really poor conditions on borders when there are other solutions, i.e., has anyone heard of Container City? Tell you, it's shipping containers where you can take panels out and you can build them to whatever size you want, and you can deck them out and you can put a load of stuff in them. And oh, we don't have the money. Corporate social responsibility, anyone? It's just because we haven't been asking. We've just been like, oh yeah, sure, we trust you. Really? Who are we trusting? I'll give you a bit of a story about the housing problem in London, and then you can then take that out into your own local environment, because yes, I live in London, but I have travelled enough to understand that property and prices and rent and all of that is again kept up here, and then if you're down here, you're likely to be on the streets, and you don't have to be an addict or a this or a that to be living on the streets. I had to pay a little old lady's rent for 26 weeks so she wouldn't get evicted. We need to understand that because of this no cap on a private market, people are buying into properties that are actually empty. They're saying that there's a housing shortage, but if you actually looked at all the properties and we're like, okay, that one's empty and that one's empty and that one's empty and that one's empty because we can't afford to live in them. And if they do want to give it to a social landlord, they're charging them 3 or 4 times what a normal tenant would pay. Another example, my block, there's nothing wrong with it. There doesn't need any repairs, but let's just knock it down and make more money, and then whoever is living there will just push them out into other areas because they can't afford to live here anymore. Social cleansing or gentrification or whatever you want to call it, it's actually such an unbalanced system. And I'm not saying let's take all the property here and give it to everybody. That's not what I'm trying to say. People have worked very hard, and I get that security is very, very important, and food, shelter and education should be made accessible to everybody. And it's a load of crap that there is no affordable housing because of the way that it's been. I'll just charge you what I want, and you're going to be so scared that you won't get a room that you'll just pay more and you'll just pay more and you'll just pay more and you'll just pay more, to the point where someone's paying £800 for a room. I just want to ask you guys and put a question out there. What's the difference in being in the zoo and being locked in your cage, or being locked in your houses at the minute in this pandemic, and understanding that the only reason you can't afford to live in a nicer place or anything like that is because of the imperial system that we've all been pushed into, and then told that you need X amount of money to have any form of security, and this and that and that and that and that and that and that and that, to the point that this is going to crash the entire market, and the powers that be are going to buy you all out so cheap and then make money off you again. Is that fair? Or do we actually need to come together and have a massive house party and start to understand that it's fine to make money, but I've seen families being destroyed because of inheritances and things like that. Do we really need to be living like that? Do we really need to have people on the streets? Do we really need to have refugees that don't have any facilities when we have, it's 2020. There is so many forms of accommodation, and I'm going to just put this out there. Since no one is working in these office blocks and all the hotels and all of that, why don't we start looking at how we can transform those into affordable housing rather than knocking down perfectly in good condition blocks to build more houses out of paper and cardboard and then overcrowd us even more? You know, the overcrowding, they don't put us in a high rise and more ticky-tacky little boxes. Is that the solution? I don't believe knocking down houses and putting more houses on top is a solution. I believe looking at the inequality of the current housing situation and how the social landlords had to sell their properties to these housing associations, who then sold them off privately, and there is such a divide between the private sector and the public sector that is actually breaking communities apart. And in order for communities to start coming together and working together, we need to start balancing that system back out. And that comes from us understanding that, yeah, sure, I made lots of money on property or whatever in the past, and that's not going to change. I'll still be making some, but not an extortionate amount that people can't afford to eat, or that there are people on the streets because there's all these empty and vacant properties that belong to foreign investors and the average person can't even afford to live in them. Really, we need to start looking at this as a serious issue that needs to be addressed, because it's not just here in London, it's international, that people can't afford to live because of the inequality of the system, and without actually capping these private markets, because who owns these properties? Think about it. The land is actually, again, just quickly, a house goes up in value money-wise, but goes down in terms of the building will need maintenance and repair. You know, it's going to cost you a lot more money to maintain a property that's older. So why are we paying so much just for rent and things like that, or saying that my property is worth this much money, when in actual fact it's like a car, it's going to depreciate in terms of its quality. So we need to really be smart in the way we're looking at housing and why we can't afford to live anymore, or why we have such a housing issue and people on the streets. And it's not because there's something wrong with these people, it's because of the inequality of our systems. And by taking a very smart approach to housing and understanding that there is enough to go around, and if not, container cities, and there are so many different forms of shelter that we can start to look at. And rather than turning a blind eye, why don't we actually go, hey, let's come together, let the alien nation understand that you don't buy into a nice neighborhood, you make a nice neighborhood, and that comes with everybody doing their bit. So rather than destroying communities, let's start looking at how we're going to bring communities together. And rather than have a system that's like this, why don't we start to look at how we can balance it out a little bit? So I hope this helps. Please like, share, and get the message out there. And yeah, have a great day.